You know, Larry, we might want to start today's show by hearkening back to the early 1970s. What were your initial impressions when Watergate was happening, and how are you today? Good to see you again, Larry.
I'm here. My thinking back then was that it was much ado of nothing, because I even knew back then that kind of stuff went on all the time, and it was just that was such a bad period of time for America, for Nixon. You know, everybody with the war in Vietnam, everybody trying to get out. It was, and then plus everybody sort of knew Nixon was a little bit out of plumb. You know, he was paranoid. It was pretty well known throughout the D.C. area.
But what can you say in terms of comparing and contrasting what's happening now? Like today and yesterday, you know, you and I have been doing shows to let people know exactly how critical this is, but how do you feel this situation compares to the build-up to like just the days before, you know, today's the day. They've issued the articles of impeachment. Can you remember that day in the 70s?
No, I can't remember that. And, you know, it's extremely unfair, Jason, for any of us to try to put into some perspective the comparisons between Nixon and Clinton and Trump, because this is just so very, very different.
Yeah.
In Nixon and in Clinton, in both of them, there was the establishment, Jason, of crime. All right? Crime had been established. This one is unheard of in our history, period, because as yet, they have not clearly defined or had an actual prosecutorial body apply charges. They haven't.
Right. And you know, Larry, people have been questioning me quite a bit, because yesterday when we did the show, I had raised the notion that I feel somebody like Devin Nunes should have stopped this. And people said, well, Jason, what are you talking about? Devin Nunes is just one guy. He doesn't have the voting power to stop it. But that wasn't what I was talking about. I was suggesting that Devin Nunes could potentially use a similar type of process to that used by Adam Schiff himself. And by that I mean Adam Schiff hasn't used the established mechanisms or anything in the Constitution that is the method for impeaching a president. He's just been doing these little baby step type political stunts over the past several weeks and months that eventually got him to where he needed to be, and before everybody knew it, we were in it. I really wish somebody like Devin Nunes would have stood up to Adam Schiff and stopped him right away. Now it falls to Lindsey Graham. Can you tell us a bit, Larry, what it is that we will expect to see happen, and what's going to happen now with Lindsey Graham and the Senate Judiciary Committee?
This is what I have been fearing, folks, for it ever to come down to resting on the shoulders and the honor of Lindsey Graham. Let me explain why. Number one, Jason, you have asked me over and over and over again, both on air and off, I think.
Yep.
Why has Graham not brought Hunter Biden into his committee? Why wait? Why does he keep waiting on Hunter Biden? Why keep waiting for him?
Yeah.
And then Graham always kind of throws out, when he is queered about this, he kind of throws out a lame little excuse like, well, he's waiting until the process is done in the House, whatever. All right, that's not true. The reason Lindsey Graham, Jason, cannot bring Hunter Biden and Joe Biden before his committee, or hasn't wanted to, is because Lindsey Graham and John McCain were involved in the same payola scam
Right.
in the Ukraine that Biden and his son were. So if he brought them in, they were planning to finger him and throw it back on him as well. So now what's the world going to do? Now the fate of President Trump, to a good extent, rests in Lindsey Graham's hands. And we do know, although I do not know the complexity of it, I do not know the total involvement of it, but I can assure you there is connection to Biden, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, McCain, and that little money game with the Burisma, or whatever you call it.
Burisma, yeah.
Burisma with Lindsey Graham and John McCain.
Yeah. And I'm showing a video right now, Larry, of Lindsey Graham and John McCain meeting with former Ukrainian President Poroshenko, who many people have told us is essentially installed by the United States. We've also got the ambassador, Maria Yanukovych, sitting there. So, you know, one of the things that's been really interesting for me, Larry, is that we're seeing a lot of these sort of backroom players thrust to the forefront. Most people really never know who the ambassador to Ukraine is, and now we're putting them up on a level with the President of the United States as far as giving them power to decide who rules the country.
Right. And then you find out that when we've referred over and over to the congressmen and senators and who their sugar daddies are, these lobbyists that, you know, pretty much control them. You know, we've talked forever about Lindsey Graham, John McCain. Their main supply of support and money and power has been from the military-industrial complex. Well, look how logical that is when you've got a country like Ukraine being invaded by Russia, and they're in the middle of shaking them down for arms. You know, think about it.
And Larry,
it's an incredibly tangled web.
Right. But isn't it also true, Larry, that this, you know, simply to say that Russia invaded Ukraine, it's a little bit of an oversimplification. I believe, and again, I'm not an expert on this, we've got to talk to guys like Lee Stranahan and others, Diana West, but it seems to me that after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was an arrangement made, I think by George H.W. Bush, our mutual favorite, where he said that we weren't going to expand NATO, and Russia said okay, but then, as those types of deals frequently go, they totally lied, started pursuing all kinds of countries to join NATO, including Ukraine, and this put a lot of pressure, political and other pressure, on Russia. And when they tried to, you know, give Crimea back to whoever, Russia said, forget it, that's an important military and economic port for us, and they basically agitated Russia to the point of doing what they did.
Yeah, you know, Jason, for the purposes of this program, I haven't gotten into the depth of that whole mess, and it is a mess, and it's confusing at many levels. But I just wanted to show the tie with Lindsey Graham and Biden and Ukraine, so that people understand it's not just a simple fix. Great, we're in great shape now. They've come up with the rules for impeachment, and so great, now it goes to the Senate. We won, it's over, everything's fine, because now Graham, who has boldly gone on Sean Hannity and others saying what he was going to do when it got to his committee and how he was going to, you know, stand up and correct it. Now I'm trying to point out it's not going to be that quick fix that everybody thought we could expect at this moment in time. It's not.
There's actually significant danger that if it gets to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham basically holds the keys to the destruction of the Trump presidency.
He does indeed. And, you know, up until McCain died, and from McCain's death till present, we have seen what appeared to be this tremendous fidelity to President Trump from Lindsey Graham.
Right.
You've doubted it. I've doubted it. I don't know that that's all that real.
Right.
But
Yeah,
we're going to find out now, and tomorrow's going to be a big test. You
absolutely.
see, tomorrow is, for those of you that don't know or yet haven't heard yet, tomorrow Horowitz goes before Lindsey Graham's committee in the Senate. Now, one of the things that I've had to work on today that Jason knows about is this preposterous statement or claim by the IG Horowitz that there was he found no documentation or evidence of political bias in the endeavor having to do with all of this stuff with Ukraine. Folks, that's not true.
It's absurd.
That's not true. And the reason it's not is I'm going to give all of you, obviously, something that the most brilliant minds in the Inspector General's office of the judicial branch or whatever of the
Senate
Attorney
Judicial
General's
Committee.
office.
Oh,
Yeah, the most brilliant minds couldn't find this one piece of evidence or these pieces of evidence showing political bias and how this entire investigation was started corruptly and wrongly. And that goes back to Jason, Strzok,
yeah.
and Page.
Yep.
In their emails, which have been made public to everybody, apparently Lisa Page thinks it's been wrongfully made public because she's suing the government today for her private emails being made public.
Mm-hmm.
But in their emails, they refer to, don't they, Jason, help me here, in that making reference to political bias as you interpret it?
I certainly think so. I mean, I'm looking at some of her texts right now. People will easily recall that she was asking things of Peter Strzok, like, will this guy become president? And he's saying, we won't let it happen, and all this kind of stuff.
Then they also make reference in some of their emails to, she asked, I believe, Peter Strzok, did you go over this in Andy's off with Andy,
Right.
meaning Andrew McCabe?
Yep.
So how on earth can Horowitz be taken seriously, folks, when he says there was no evidence of political bias?
Yeah.
In the prerequisite of what started this investigation, especially when you know also in the timeline that Strzok was involved as early as the very beginning 302s.
Right. Strzok was also questioning General Flynn. Strzok was also involved in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. And, just to step back for 1 second, Larry, the only reason why I wanted to bring up that whole thing with, McCain and Graham in Ukraine is because there's actually a lot of reasons why Lindsey Graham doesn't want this thing looked into and doesn't want to question Hunter Biden. Larry Klayman was with me last night talking about how, this is the way the DC swamp works. If Lindsey Graham starts pulling out evidence on Hunter Biden, certainly some ally of Joe Biden is going to have evidence of Lindsey Graham receiving money either in Ukraine or, this very conspicuous picture that, him there with Blumenthal and McCain in Libya getting some award from Belhaj. What is he doing with this terrorist? I'm sure he doesn't want shows like Sean Hannity looking at this picture in the way that shows like Crowdsource The Truth have been looking at the picture, so he's got a lot to hide himself.
Yes, he does. And, let's not forget Lindsey Graham, who claims to be, what do you call it, he's non-sexual, whatever that is.
Does he claim that?
Yeah, he says he's asexual.
Huh.
And it just so happens, folks, that even Lindsey Graham is in one of his vulnerable moments now because he, too, is having to run for re-election in this cycle. So ordinarily, you would see Lindsey Graham, even in a situation like this, huff and puff and strut around as though he was impervious to any kind of trouble, because he would be virtually untouchable. Well, he's not untouchable now, and he knows it. So tomorrow, which Lindsey Graham, Jason, is going to show up tomorrow? Now, listen, folks, I admitted my failings yesterday. I did. I've admitted them. I was led to believe, with everything that's going on, that Horowitz was going to be where he was supposed to be, and he out and out lied. And now we know he out and out lied, not somebody like me, but he lied to Barr and he lied to Durham, and they are very much on the warpath about his, what he's done to them and done to their case, because he's really put their cases in jeopardy. But, I've come forward. Now it's time for some of these others. They're going to have to come forward. Lindsey Graham's going to show his colors tomorrow, Jason. Which Graham is he going to be? Is he going to be the one 100% behind Donald Trump, do or die?
Definitely.
Or is he going to be the one that protects himself?
Larry, we know which one it's going to be.
Well, yeah, but he's going to have to show it. And that's not a good move for senior politicians in Washington. They do not like to be put in this position.
No.
And folks, I hate to say it, but everything having to do with this impeachment is very scary, because it all, as you know, Jason, hinges, quite honestly, probably more around Lindsey Graham than Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. Not that I'd have much faith in Mitch McConnell also. Larry, I do want to remind everybody that's watching us right now that Larry doesn't get paid by me to appear on this show. He only is paid by you, the viewers, when you choose to go to PayPal and use his PayPal address, nicholslive@aol.com. If you watch the show regularly and you haven't sent any kind of sponsorship support to Larry, I hope that today will be the day that you choose to go to paypal.com and send Larry $5 or $10, $25. Send him some money. Use his email, nicholslive@aol.com. You can stick a few bucks in an envelope and mail it to him in Conway, Arkansas. Larry really relies on the support of the viewers here on the show. This is his only regular show that he appears on, and people are obviously enjoying listening to Larry. We have some pretty huge numbers in terms of the viewers on some of these shows, so I hope that people will sponsor Larry. Now, Larry, you and I were having a little conversation before the show began, and I had suggested that it's possible that one reason why, I had asked you if you have Lindsey Graham in a room, and in that same room you have Hunter Biden, you got almost 2 Grahams there. So part of the reason they don't want to bring in Hunter Biden is that it's amazing how they've been avoiding the topic. I'm joking, obviously, but this is a serious topic. We've been talking about process crimes, obstruction of justice, collusion. He's asking the president of another country to investigate what is essentially prima facie evidence of massive corruption within their country. And we've moved so far off that topic, no one's even talking about it.
No, and what is incredible and has long since been forgotten, ladies and gentlemen, is President Trump was 1,000,000% within his duties as president to make the request. Maybe his verbiage, maybe his wording was maybe loosely chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, he was well within his rights to ask that question, and as a matter of fact, as the #1 chief law enforcement officer in this country, actually it's his duty. And don't forget, he ran an entire campaign to run for president based off the fact that he was going to clean up this foreign aid. He was going to, get to straightening out as best he could, and that's what he's doing. Yeah. But that, as you say, Jason, that's all been forgotten. Yeah. This is nothing. But is there any other trick the Democrats can use to get this guy out of office prior to the election in 2020?
Is there? Probably.
Well, um, since they're not following any rules, since all the rules today are being made up, which is totally unprecedented in the history of this nation. I mean, folks, everything's just being made up as we go along now by the Democrats. So yeah, there's probably another couple of alternatives yet to come that we have not seen. And I believe one of them is being teased to us, if you think about it, as they have been talking about, that he can be impeached many times. He doesn't just have to get impeached once. So they may be treating this initial impeachment as a trial balloon to see exactly how the Republicans are going to make their counter moves, right? And then when the Republicans give it up and make their counter moves on this impeachment, then they will probably come back and hit him again. Remember, oddly enough, in these impeachment charges that they have announced, isn't it odd? They don't mention quid pro quo or bribery. I mean, that's absurd.
It is. I mean, you know, Larry, there was somebody who testified last week. Oh, it was Jonathan Turley who spoke about how, I think it was Professor Turley, spoke about how Alexander Hamilton warned against the abuse of impeachment, that it's not intended to be used as a political tool. I think at this point, most people know that I have submitted a motion to disqualify Robert David Steele's lawyer in the lawsuit they've brought against me. And that motion, the disqualification of another attorney, is very carefully governed by a set of rules that prevent it from being used as a strategic weapon. It's intended to be used to rectify a problem in the normal goings-on of a highly regulated process, not to be thrown around as a political arrow to be shot at enemies. And certainly a second attempt at impeachment, I mean, they're testing the boundaries of the American people, right? Every time they stretch the envelope, it doesn't return back to its original position.
Yes, and what you're seeing, folks, is technically, I would call what a friend of mine, a lady friend, named it literally years ago, whatever. They have literally now started weaponizing the law.
Yes, lawfare.
One of the most dangerous things you can do is weaponizing our legal system in the political arena. You know, if anybody saw it, I saw just about a minute and a half of Barr in some interview he was doing today. And he actually made that point as well. You know, he said, what's happening today is the politicians, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, what's happening today, the politicians are running around, scurrying around, and trying to find some legal statute to hang around the neck of an opposing politician and then use the prosecutorial process to destroy him.
Yeah.
And they're not seeking restitution legally, Jason. That's the kicker to this. They're not actually trying to put Trump in jail. They're just trying to get him out of office.
Yeah, they're not seeking a cure to an actual injury, which is the intended purpose of these legal processes. They're just simply using it to, you know, as you said, as a weapon against an enemy. I mean, this is why I keep drawing parallels between those that are opposing the president and those that are opposing me and this show and the other people that have been subjected to this type of lawfare. Dr. Corsi and I think even Carter Page. I don't know the full details of what's going on with Carter Page, but he seems back in the news. They have all these tools and people, these operational plants that they insert into these things, and you know, it's problematic. Larry, we've got a commenter here who is mentioning that he feels that you sound ill, and I think everybody knows that Larry has a pretty chronic condition. I want to say, Larry's never told me that he has cancer. He's never said that to me, but we can tell he needs our support, even if he's...
Let's just say, Jason, let's just say I've got a serious lung problem and keep it at that. I do not put my personal health out in the public. Please, folks, there's some things my family gets to keep private.
Right.
Not much, but some.
Yeah.
But
It is a good
obviously I
reminder
have.
from our audience, Larry. It's a good reminder that people who are feeling sympathetic towards Larry, people who enjoy listening to his commentary, it's really important that you go to nicholslive.com, hit the donate tab, and use Larry's PayPal address. Go to paypal.com and send Larry some money with nicholslive@aol.com, or drop some cash in an envelope and mail it to him. Sorry, Larry, you were saying?
Well, it's important, and folks, that y'all understand why I'm here, why Jason's here with Crowdsource the Truth. As you see, they're manipulating every platform of communication that we have. And so the smartest thing for me, and the best thing for Jason, and overall the best thing for all of y'all, is listener-supported programming, because I could not come on most programs without limitations to what I would say. For example, if they are strongly pro-Trump, which I am, which Jason is, of course, but they wouldn't want us talking bad about Lindsay Graham for one reason or another.
Exactly.
Well, the truth about Lindsay's the truth.
Yeah.
It's got to be said. Or, are you going to end up blindsided again and wondering what happened?
Mm-hmm.
So all of you, you've got skin in this game just like we do. Help us. Help us keep getting the message out. As you've seen, when I am misled, and I know now purposely, when I am misled, I will correct it and tell y'all. It's my job, I believe, it's in my heart to keep y'all with the truth as I know it, beyond the best I can tell you. And if it's my opinion, I'll tell you that. But listener-supported and listener-sponsored is the only thing that's going to save this country as far as us having some way to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Because they are just taking more and more liberty. They're taking more and more control of all the different platforms. And if you've got an advertising program, believe it or not, guys, say what you will, but an advertiser has a lot to affect the content of a program, a lot to do with it.
Yeah, because all they have to do is, and we've seen it with Tucker Carlson and others, even if the advertiser doesn't want to exert influence on the show, the people buying the products boycott the product, and then the advertiser either loses all their money and goes out of business and can't advertise anymore, and then the show goes off. So this type of direct sponsorship is a powerful way, Larry, that you and I can keep getting the message out. And here's what I'll say to people who don't want to or cannot afford to sponsor Larry or to sponsor the show. Another great way that people can help Larry is simply by sharing these broadcasts on social media or directly emailing them to their friends. Even that is quite helpful. And Larry, what we're doing today, you and I have now gotten into a regular practice of simulcasting the show so that people can watch it on YouTube, on DLive, on Facebook, on Periscope, of course, on Patreon and Crowdsource the Truth. And actually, starting this week, for the first time, this is only the second show we've done it with, people can now watch the show by going to the Larry Nichols official YouTube channel. And we've got 93. Let's get one more person watching. We don't want 93 to be the number, but 92. We've got almost 100 people watching on your channel, Larry, and we've got 500 people watching on the other channels. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. There's been a really big increase in YouTube subscribers over the past month. There's about 4,000 new people. So I know people are very interested in this, Larry, and everyone's feeling very tense. You've told us yesterday and today how you were deceived. Yeah, you were deceived, but that's pretty standard practice in D.C., right? I mean, sometimes you go pretty far down a road and then you realize you've been tricked.
Well, yes. I mean, as I have always warned, lying in Washington is just a staple product. I mean, it's just business of the day. But it's my job, I believe. Nobody's appointed me to this task, but it's been my job to take my years of experience and knowledge and try to sift through and protect the things I say from being caught up in the lies, and I try to do the best I can. Horowitz, I've got to tell you, slipped a Mickey to all of us. To all of us. And I'm talking about people with much bigger roles in what's going on than me. And you can somewhat see that by the reaction from Barr and Durham. You know, they're standing up quickly and saying, whoa. And if you understand, all of you, how they are starting to weaponize the law and use it in the political theater, it really screws things up. You got to have one thing, Jason, to be able to pull this stunt, which is what communist nations have done, dictator nations have done, socialist nations have done for years. We're just seeing it in America now out front. It's been going on, but you're just now starting to see it out front. You got to have one little trick to pull this kind of stuff off.
What's that?
And that's control of the media. You've got to have control of what we call the mainstream media. In communist countries, they call it state-run media. But you got to have that. They've got that now. And since they have that, they're able to go and use weaponizing the legal system and make it work in the political venue. And folks, it's deadly. It's dangerous. It's scary. They can take if you just simply do the math, if they can do this to the President of the United States, if they can just do little tricks within the law, make up rules, do all the stuff that they're doing that you're seeing it right now. If they can do that to the President of the United States, now extrapolate that back to your life. Do you think they couldn't do that to any one of us like you would swat a fly?
Yeah. It's troubling, Larry. It's really troubling. So,
and that comes into play. You would say, well, let me say this, Jason, and people would say, well, yeah, but why would they want to mess with me? Hey, let me tell you, what about the next time your kids are put through something at your school that you don't like, and you and the other parents don't like, and you go and protest at the school board, and then all of a sudden you're being prosecuted for robbing banks on the weekend that you've never even heard of, but it destroys you, and all the other parents then therefore say, well, we better shut up too, and everybody shuts up.
Right.
It affects your local governance. It does. It's designed to affect your local government.
Yep. You know, Larry, I was watching a Periscope from Owen Schroyer last night. Owen was arrested by the Capitol Police for disrupting Congress. It was interesting to hear his story. He basically, shouted in the middle of the proceedings that Jerry Nadler was obstructing Congress and committing treason. And I agree with what Owen said. It was interesting that he pointed out when they removed him, they basically just took him out for disrupting, but didn't really know what to do with him. They were kind of going to release him. I think he mentioned that they told him if he started recording, they would arrest him, but they didn't immediately arrest him. And Owen speculated that he felt that Jerry Nadler had told them specifically to arrest him because you think about a guy like Owen Schroyer, he's in his 30s. I mean, if he's got to fly from Texas to Washington, D.C. to appear in court next week, next month, whenever it is, that's going to cost him over $1,000. It's going to take time out of work. It's a big deal. Some, fat jerk like Gerald Nadler can kind of snap his fingers and make that happen. And suddenly Owen Schroyer is spending some percentage of his annual income dealing with a problem that wasn't a problem a moment ago, but it was a valid form of protest, I felt.
Yes. And, how many times have we seen Antifa types interrupt time and time again in hearings, and they simply escort them out, take them outside and tell them shut up, go away.
Right.
But you will notice that to our side, we run the risk, I'm not saying he did get treated this way, but you run the risk that they could have very easily done what you're suggesting, or maybe did do it. And it's a whole different ballgame when it's on us. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and I mean, Owen is obviously a very visible part of Alex Jones' crew, And they definitely want to shut those guys down because whatever people think about Alex, he's been remarkably effective in creating an alternative news network that was really important, I think, in helping Donald Trump get elected. Larry, Jeff George is asking me if I believe the conspiracy that Trump has the hidden gold that would pay off the national debt and redo the monetary system. That's the first time I'm hearing that, and I have to say that without evidence, that sounds so fantastic that I'm not going to believe that just on its face.
Yeah, I've heard things like that, but that's another one of those things that I put into the world of who knows. I mean, that's the bad side, honestly, guys, of the internet and this massive ability for people to put out anything they want.
Right.
You know, I heard yesterday, so you know, somebody called me in a panic. I mean, in a panic. They had heard, it wasn't in a panic, but anyway, I got a call that on Facebook somebody had put out that CNN was putting out that Trump was resigning at 12 noon yesterday.
What?
Yeah, somebody put out that it was coming from CNN that President Trump was resigning at 12 noon yesterday.
Right.
Now, of course, it didn't happen. Of course, it wasn't true. But there's no telling how many people responded to that in a panic. No telling.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
Larry,
like that just spread.
My general guideline for people is that when you hear something, always be skeptical, even if it sounds plausible. And in this case, you know, I appreciate the question, Jeff, but I don't think Trump has a bunch of gold sitting. I mean, Trump is worth a couple of $1 billion. The national debt is like trillions. I don't think there's one person who could pay off the national debt. I don't think it's possible to pay off the national debt. I don't know enough about money to even talk about the national debt, but it always seems like such a staggeringly huge number. It's almost impossible to contemplate. Larry, one thing I wanted to bring to your attention that is potentially very important. Just a few hours ago on TruePundit.com, our friend Mike Moore put up an article here about the Inspector General being rocked. Inspector General told to falsify documents and fabricate evidence to alter witness testimony in a rigged investigation. Now, this is an article that's talking about an affidavit from a high-ranking U.S. Inspector General, not Inspector General Horowitz. But it's my understanding that this article is speaking to the general culture of these Inspector General's office, these Inspectors General, that why do we suppose that the corrupt swamp is capable of investigating itself? Horowitz has been in this government for a long, long time, was appointed as the Inspector General by Barack Obama. What we're trying to investigate, allegedly, is the possibility that Barack Obama and his allies and associates were the ones to do the spying.
Right, it was actually Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Clapper, and Brennan that were the predicate to starting this whole thing. They were, that was it. And then here we're saying, are we shocked, I guess, in hindsight, that this guy comes out and says, you know, he found no political bias. And of course, see, you find what we're finding out today, Jason, is actually the worthlessness of the IGs.
Right.
Inspector General finding out they're worthless because technically when they don't want to find something, they've got the natural out. Well, you know, we can't subpoena records. We can't talk to people that are not presently employed. I mean, there's a list of things that block them, if they want to be blocked, from getting to the bottom of something.
Yeah.
So they're neutered if they want to be, which is back to this problem with the deep state. It's so massive. It's so, gosh, it's just everywhere. And it's so entrenched that they can do anything they want to do, including impeach a president for something not yet to be discovered as an offense.
Yeah.
Other than the general category heading. This is bizarre, but
Right.
it's real. You know, that's where That's where the bus stops. This is incredibly, incredibly real.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Nadler did it again today, Jason. He keeps referring to the election in 2020 is already, plagued.
Fouled.
It's already screwed up. Yeah. Now, they're teasing us with that line about something, Jason. Something is up.
Yeah.
What it could be, I don't know. But I will tell you this. If you hear them talking more about censoring the president, folks, if you hear that anymore, which is what they're starting to do again today, you're hearing rumblings of it. Censoring the president of the United States is another one of those rules that has not yet ever existed. There is no constitutional excuse, way, law, statute.
No mechanism at all.
No mechanism at all. And I don't even think, Jason, anybody could define what censoring a president could even mean. I mean, what could that mean?
Larry, it's a little unclear on the phone. Are you saying they're going to censor him, like block him from saying things, or they're going to censure him, like rebuke him?
Censure him.
Censure.
Censure him.
So like just say he's been a bad boy.
Yeah. But with penalty, as I heard today, with some penalty. And by the way, you need to hear the next part. They have gone to great lengths to make sure that in some of the Ukrainian meetings having to do with this corruption that they're saying existed, they are sure to include always Mike Pence's participation. Can anybody imagine why they're doing that?
Jason? So they can get Nancy Pelosi in there. They want to get both Trump and Pence out so they can put in Pelosi.
There you go. I mean, if you can't see this one, folks, go to the eye doctor immediately. They're not just trying to get rid of Trump to facilitate him being out. They have set this up to where it gets both Trump and Pence, which gives them the net home run of Nancy Pelosi. Now, when Nancy Pelosi becomes commander-in-chief, then they're back in the game where they can use the FEMA provisional government. You see, they're barred from using FEMA provisional government right now. They're nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs that we don't have 5 major riots in 5 major cities all at one time somewhere in America. Because if we do, FEMA provisional government is triggered automatically.
If there's 5 simultaneous riots, there's a FEMA government?
Major riots. You go into FEMA provisional government, which, folks, simply stated, that's just the
martial law.
Washington speak way of martial law. And when we go into martial law, the person who is president becomes basically king. And when that person becomes king, your congressmen and senators become dukes and earls in the model of 16th century European model. That's the system. So there is a system in place ready to take over immediately, Jason. But they've got to accomplish a couple of things. They got to get rid of Trump, and they got to get rid of the vice president. And they can either do that through this next election, which they are having serious doubt about, or they're going to have to do it through alternative means. And I'm not trying to hoot everybody up with a conspiracy. This is just the truth. It's just the facts. It's just right in front of your damn face. Look.
Right. Well, Larry, how are you feeling about, a lot of people are commenting about this notion that Hillary will come into the race. Do you see any new signs that that may or may not happen?
I promise you, I'm feeling more and more her getting in. I can't tell you any more than I've told you. It's just she's coming. I think I'm so serious. She's coming.
Yeah.
She sees this is the perfect situation for her. Jason, this is perfect for her. You've got total chaos. You've got Montezuma's revenge. She feels like she was cheated out of being president. So what better vindication for her than to cheat Trump out and her get it back? She believes she should be president right now. This is not me and you saying this. That woman believes in her heart. You should be able to see it, folks, with all of the different excuses why she's not president. It's never been her. It's been all these other things. She believes she is rightfully supposed to be the president of the United States right now.
Yeah.
And she was robbed of that.
Actually, she thinks she won. She's planning to win again, is what she says, Larry. You know, I was listening to that Howard Stern interview that she did last week. They've posted the full entire thing now on YouTube, so if people were listening to clips, you can hear the full thing. Larry, it's such pathetic pandering. I think I mentioned to you, I've been a lifelong Howard Stern fan, but it's literally, I've had a shift in the way that you would when you discover that a friend or a spouse has totally betrayed you. I just feel so completely different about him. And it's interesting as well how the artificial computer learning algorithm, the artificial intelligence of YouTube, it learns about you based on the videos that you watch. So since watching this Hillary Clinton interview, I've been getting a lot more interviews about Howard Stern, but not just clips from Howard Stern's show. I've discovered over the past few days that Howard Stern himself has been baby-stepped towards a legitimate, media figure. He's sort of graduated from, when I was a kid and listening to him on the radio, he was always the bad boy of radio. He was cursing, and he had, lesbian stripper contests and all kinds of way out of whack kind of stuff outside the mainstream. And he's now reversed position on so many things, which is fine. The man's allowed to mature and evolve over time. But Larry, what I detect is that Howard Stern has been co-opted by the media apparatus as someone that they saw is as valuable because he appealed to so many people who are outside the mainstream. If they could convert him to a mainstream shill, they'd be scooping up so many millions of people who trust him. Can you speak, Larry, about your personal experience with targeting a person like that? Not necessarily a media figure, but someone who has so much credibility that the value in flipping that person to perhaps a less than honest endeavor is so great that everyone will just believe this guy and no one would ever believe that he's doing something wrong. Is there any operation you've ever known about that's done something like that?
Well, I've been involved in many of them. Number one, at the small level, we used to go around during election time in Arkansas, and in the day, back then, black communities, usually the head of the church in an area had a tremendous power on a voting block. Tremendous. And so we were constantly going into what we call straw bosses. We were constantly going into these guys and doing whatever we could to win their favor and to get them to stay solidly with us. There was one preacher on 9th Street in Little Rock that I remember so well because every election year for governor that Bill ran that I was involved, we bought him a brand new Mercedes convertible.
Wow.
Every year.
Huh.
Then there was another case that Bill Rimple with the Los Angeles Times and I listened to and heard was in Bill Clinton's first attempt to run for president when he was running. And at that time, Jesse Jackson was in the mix as well. Well, we came and I was proving to Rimple that I had bugged the governor's mansion. So we were sitting outside the governor's mansion in the front, and they were talking, Jack Stevens, Bill Clinton, I can't remember who else was in there, but they were talking to Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jesse Jackson was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to convince him to get out of the race at that moment. And would he throw his votes to Bill, throw his support to Bill? And Jackson was he was tough. He wasn't gonna cow down to that kind of stuff at all. He was above that, and we got tickled at him being so snooty about how dare them to even think he would submit to something like that. Where did they think they were,
Right.
But as it turned out, they gave the Rainbow Coalition that night, the keys essentially, I'm saying that part, but they gave the Rainbow Coalition a brand new jet airplane in exchange for his dropping the race the next day, and he did.
Yeah.
It's going on all the time.
I think Jesse Jackson probably was, at a certain point in his life, very focused on capturing the legacy of being the first black president, and I guess obviously he's less interested in that now that he can never be. But see, that's interesting because you point out exactly what I'm sort of talking about, which is you're not going to socially engineer a million stupid people. They want a target that has, you convert this person and you get a lot of people. I think, Larry, this might be part of the reason why social engineers are so intent on disrupting what I'm doing. They want to win their lawsuit and strip me of all my money and my ability to broadcast and get me to give a false admission that the things that I've said have been untrue. That would be a victory for them because it would leave a lot of people thinking that they are telling the truth, which they're not.
Yeah, and what's scary about exactly what you're talking about, and I'm going to use Rush Limbaugh as an example, and I have great respect, great regard for Rush Limbaugh. I did his first television show. I was on his first television show back when he did a lot of guests. But Rush Limbaugh, for an example, here's a guy that, I don't know, let's say he has 6 million listeners at any one time, whatever. It's scary to think, Jason, that if you could flip Rush Limbaugh, if you could flip him, just with his changing opinion or attitude about something or someone, what percentage of his audience would just immediately go along with him?
Huge percent.
Just go along with him.
Huge number.
That's scary. Yes, that's scary. And that's what they've done with CNN. That's what they've done with MSNBC. You see, they tried to capsulize people, find out what programming fits this specific clicks kind of people, and then they hire these announcers you see on TV, guys. You know what they're hired by? You know, Jason, but I mean, people don't. They're hired by what's called a believability quotient. When you see an announcer, auditioning for a new spot on Fox or CNN, whatever, they're judged by what's called a believability quotient, which means can they read something off a teleprompter or a sheet of paper, can they read it and sound believable? Having never seen it before, just read it. Look impassioned, look like they're into it. It's all a scam.
Yeah.
It's all a scam.
Yeah.
And once they hook you, once they got you, they manipulate you like a herd of sheep.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's a process very similar to casting in a movie. You've got to have that it factor, right? Certainly we speak about the changing times. Someone who is openly gay would never be on television, even in the 1990s when Ellen DeGeneres first had her sitcom. When it was revealed that she was a lesbian, she was fired. Like now,
right.
I'm even reluctant to say the word lesbian because someone will tell me that's hate speech and my YouTube channel will be shut down.
Right. Remember Barney Franks? Oh my God. Well, now being a homosexual, whatever you want to call it, I don't even know what they call it anymore. That's almost a prerequisite. It's almost a plus. Well, it is a plus. Look at that Mayor Buttigieg or whatever.
Right. Bootygate.
It all changes. But you got to be careful. We've lost what I hope you're doing with Crowdsource to Truth and what we're doing here, we're losing the independent thinking, the independent thinker. Think for yourself. You've seen from me yesterday, I can make a mistake. I could mislead you, not on purpose, but I certainly am capable of misleading you. So is Jason. Think for yourself. Don't ever be put in a position to where you're going to go down if I go down.
Right. But that is a tactic of social engineers, isn't it, Larry? They want to plant bad information with you so that people say, oh, there was bad information.
They do that all the time. All of the time. When Bill was president, you're not going to believe how impossible it was for me to get to know anyone. Anyone.
Because they all wanted something from you.
Every person that came into my life, every person that came into my life was one of two things. They were either coming into my life because they felt like I was some kind of celebrity then, or they were coming in to get in with me because they were working for the Clintons. I mean, I had 4 or 5 that I can remember right now, private detectives that worked their way in to try to get to be confidants with me and to take me. They had all these women that they had found that were going to come out and talk. And I just needed to get the media to come and meet us and go public. I mean, it was just constant.
So wait a minute, Larry, you're saying the Clintons hired private investigators who posed as various political people wanting to get to know the president so that the private investigator could learn about what you and other Clinton staffers were doing?
Yeah, they were so convinced that I was working with, at that time, the Republican Party. They were wanting to know who my contacts were in the Republican Party that was helping me bring out all the stuff I was bringing out. They never did believe that it was me, obviously. Bill did, but they didn't. They just kept thinking that I was in cahoots. They had me paired up with everybody. Any conservative, well, that was who was funding me. I was funded. They even claimed that I had $1 million in a Cayman bank account in my name.
Sounds like something they would do.
Pittsburgh bank. Yeah. But they did that all the time. And you just don't realize how dirty this game is. And now that they have moved this weaponization of law into the mainstream, into the big leagues, folks, we're in danger. We're in jeopardy, serious jeopardy, not to mention the fact, what you brought up yesterday. They have the incredible advantage that something that sounds so impossible, it can't be real. When in fact, it can be real.
It is real.
That's right. But you see, they play off the fact that it sounds so impossible. Everybody will just go, oh, that's nuts, that's crazy.
Right.
There's no way that
conspiracy
can
theory.
be.
They love to say that.
Mm-hmm.
See, the reason I'm asking about that private investigator, Larry, is because it sounds like a sort of a clandestine method that an employer might use to basically spy on employees to make sure that no one's infiltrated their organization and that they know the details about everybody who's in there.
Right.
And it causes me to think about this product that we've heard about recently. I had a guest on the show named Patrick Berge, who was a former Army IT expert who, after he retired from the U.S. Army, he went to work for a company called Dynology that's created a product called ClearForce. And what it's intended to do, at least in its commercial iteration, is to allow employers and owners of large corporations to make a predictive analysis. It's 24/7 employee risk management. This is a tool that's intended to help you identify employees who might be doing things that are counterproductive to your organization, stealing information, etc. And this is a tool that's supposed to help you decide who to hire, or who to fire or to make these kind of preemptive decisions. This is a suite of tools that use social media, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence to arrive at conclusions and make decisions that human beings and normal brains cannot do. We've all heard about big data and artificial intelligence, and I know, Larry, you're not a computer expert. I'm not asking you to delve into an area of computer expertise that's outside of your bailiwick, but you certainly know that Google and Facebook and these giant social media big data operations can achieve things that were never before achievable. And this ClearForce thing sounds remarkably similar. It sounds like the modernized, computerized version of exactly what the Clintons were doing to you when you worked for them.
Right. And guys, I'm telling you, this internet espionage is going to grow. It's going to grow.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you're going to be risking everything when you get on your computer talking to your cousin or your neighbor. I mean, I've had to live, Jason, with this spying seems like my entire life.
Yeah.
That's why I've had to be very careful about, I still have the friends I had when I was in high school and family, and that's about it, because I cannot allow myself very easily to expose me or my family to somebody coming into my world.
Some new person, yeah. You don't know what their motives are.
Nope. And guys, I know you're sitting there saying, well, yeah, but maybe I need to be more concerned than y'all do. No, this applies to each and every one of you.
Right.
I mean, you may end up with a boss at a company you work at that goes paranoid. And then just like Jason's talking about with this piece of equipment he's speaking of here, a paranoid boss can just intrude in every part of your life.
Yeah.
Today they can.
Yeah.
And the worst part of it is, Jason, the government is doing it.
Exactly. Well, the company is owned by Barack Obama's former national security advisor, Larry. This company is owned by Jim Jones. And it talks about continuous post-hire alerts that are looking for criminal activity, human resources violations, financial violations. It's real time, and it's got event-based alerts. I mean, it sounds like the type of tool that you could use to spy on virtually anybody for virtually anything. And it's quite interesting that Patrick Berge was recently interviewed by someone who I believe is a social engineer, former associate of this show. A lot of strange circumstances surrounding that. Everybody needs money, Larry, and when somebody offers you money to help you achieve your goal, that can be very seductive. I'm concerned for what might be happening in that situation.
And I will say this to close out this little part of today's program. Think about the tools, the weapons, the intrigue that was brought to bear or has been brought to bear against President Trump. And with all the assets and tools and spying and cheating and all the stuff that they have at their disposal with the NSA, the FBI, all of them.
Yeah.
And for him to come out as clean as he has come out is actually quite remarkable, don't you think?
Right. Well, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you, because I told you about my friend who I spoke to at Thanksgiving who got all upset with this conversation. He brought up Jared Kushner, and he said, don't you think it's a problem that the president has appointed his son-in-law to this important position? Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty have told us that Jared Kushner has received ridiculous, huge sums of, commission for sales of weapons to Saudi Arabia. The question that I have, Larry, this is actually a good question. Why is no one in Adam Schiff's committee questioning the president about that? They're only talking about fake nonsense.
Because if they get into that question, they get into the cash cow.
Exactly.
For all of them.
Right.
Remember, that's the key that's causing the trouble. That's why they're having to go after your president and mine, folks, the way they are. They can go after him in one way, but they cannot run the risk of exposing the deep state. If they're not careful in going after him, they open the door to the deep state and what's been going on for years and years and years that he's trying to clean up. It's an incredible web. It's an incredible time we live in now. Oh, by the way, I've just got 3 PayPal contributions. I didn't say how much they were, but thank you, y'all. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful.
But, you know, it's an incredible time we're living in, Jason, because history literally is being made about every half a day now.
Yeah.
Something is happening. And it's amazing what we don't even pay attention to. Like I told you earlier, Jason, you know, the insurance companies that thought they were going to profit from Obamacare, and, you know, they were going to underwrite all these policies and whatever the loss the federal government was going to cover it for them.
Right.
Well, they're suing today for $12 billion because guess what? They got stoned too. The federal government said, nah, we're not going to pay for all that.
Oh, my God.
So tell me this. They're still running. They said, you know, Obamacare was still going up. How's it going on? Who's underwriting Obamacare when none of the insurance companies are getting paid, or at least not getting paid what they're supposed to be getting paid contractually?
I can tell you that, you know, I switched to an insurance company that is, you know, came about after Obamacare here in New York, and the bill used to be significantly lower than my insurance company that I had at the time. But just this year, it has gone to a level that is 2x what that insurance premium was when I started with Obamacare. The deductible is huge, and it's not very good insurance. If you listen to Barack Obama talk about Obamacare, he's a lawyer too, right? So he parses his words very carefully. He always says, you know, 95% of Americans have insurance. Doesn't say anything about the quality of the health care they're getting or the cost that they're paying for it. That's gone through the roof.
Well, Obamacare should have been case in point when it became known by the person that drafted Obamacare for Obama, that guy, when he said it, and then when Obama himself admitted that when they said you can keep your doctor and you can keep your insurance or whatever he said, it turned out they knew it was a lie.
Yeah.
Folks, do y'all realize that made that legislation fraudulent legislation? And any member of Congress could have gone to the floor and shut down Obamacare that day because it was a fraudulent bill. Fraudulent bill. And nobody did, and nobody has, even to this day.
Yeah. Fraudulent bill would also be a good nickname for President Clinton. Larry, with that, I think we're out of time for today. Give us just one last thought. Do you believe that Lindsey Graham will the Senate Judiciary Committee call Hunter Biden or Adam Schiff as witnesses?
All right, at this moment in time, I can tell y'all there is serious debate as to whether or not the Republicans are let me say this, there's serious debate at this moment as to the possibility that the Senate will literally take a motion to help me, Jason,
dismiss.
To close the case.
Dismiss
to dismiss the case and not even hear it. The Senate could make a motion and vote on it to dismiss the thing and not have a Senate trial. There's
challenge the
option
legitimacy of the process, you're saying.
Right. Now, option 2 is if they go through with the trial. I think Graham will have to call shift or face all kinds of pressure from the president himself. I think that is going to be a demand from the president himself that he wants to see shift in that trial as a fact witness. Now, Biden and Hunter Biden, I think he's going to dance any and every way he can to avoid that, Jason, because not just Lindsey, but a lot of the senators in that committee, maybe not the majority of them, they all have a vested interest, and they would just as soon that all of these insider deals with foreign aid not get opened up.
Right.
So I would say I'm leaning that they will not, they'll find some reason to say they don't need Hunter Biden to testify. They'll come, even though Trump will want it and he'll want it bad, but I think they will calm him down and they will find probably some reason to justify why they don't really need him come in, and it would just dirty up the process, they'll say, or whatever. That's my opinion. I could be wrong.
There you go. But basically predicting a perpetuation of the scam. I'm sad to say I agree with you, Larry. I think that's what's likely to happen. It's been a great show today, Larry. I want to remind everybody that they can help support Larry by going over to nicholslive.com and using Larry's PayPal address, nicholslive@aol.com, to send Larry some money and keep the show going, keep Larry going, show him your support. You can also put some cash in an envelope and mail it to him in Conway, Arkansas. As Larry has frequently reminded everybody, this is the place where he is every Tuesday at 3. So it's important that we support Larry. I hope that people will also become sponsors of the show by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Coming up at 8 o'clock tonight, we've got a great episode of More Pain with True Pundit editor Michael Moore. He's going to be talking about this corruption in the Inspector General's office. Larry, I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me. It's been another great show.
Thank you, Eddie. We'll come back if we have to with an update.
You got it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.